But eventually, alcohol and smoking weed just wasn't enough, and it became to where I was seeking out other substances. And before you know it, I was hooked on what was going to be something that took me down to my bottom. Well, hello, my name's Adam. I went through Game Changers almost 2 years ago. My life had become a point to where I knew I needed to seek help, and that there wasn't much out there left for me other than recovery. My life before addiction was what looked on the outside to be pretty normal. Graduated high school, went to college, and kind of did everything as the American standard, so to speak. I got my college degree, fell in love, got married, bought a house, had a child, and had a successful career, good friends. We'd go have fun on the weekends, and you know, addiction was never really part of my life until it was. And so it started out as just partying a little hard on the weekends, but be able to put it down on Mondays. Um, but eventually, alcohol and smoking weed just wasn't enough, and it became to where I was seeking out other substances. And before you know it, I was hooked on what was going to be something that took me down to my bottom. So once addiction grabbed a hold of me, it was easy to hide for about 6 to 8 months, and then I just fell deeper into it. My career uh, abruptly come to an end. I got fired due to just behaviors and actions and the lifestyle I was living. People around me began to notice, not only between social interactions, but physical appearance was taking a toll. My marriage was taking a big hit. I wasn't present there as a husband and a father. Even though I was physically around, mentally I was distracted and was just sick inside. So it spiraled quickly, and within about a year and a half, 2 years in, it was getting very dark very fast. And it went from smoking and snorting methamphetamine to then IV use. And once the needle was introduced, everything, any little bit of life I had left was being lost. I realized I needed help in December of 2022. See, about a year before that, I went to rehab just to make other people happy. It was more like some people get mandated. I was mom dated per se, and I stayed for all of 3 days, enough to get a little sober breath of fresh air in that third day, and manipulated my way to come back home. So in December, everything around me had come crashing down. My wife had left. She took our daughter. She was scared for both of them, and rightfully so. I mean, I had become somebody unrecognizable, somebody that even I look back today and don't recognize. But thank God for the change that's took place since. And so I knew it was like either that I was going to die or I was going to take my own life, and it had become one of those situations where I was suicidal. And so, when you begin to have cop involvement and psych evals and everything else, and you start to question where you're at in life, and it was my rock bottom. So it was time that I sought help, and I began to pick up the phone and call places. So I found Game Changers through. I was calling around. There was a lot of places that it was several weeks waiting list for a bed, and so finally I got a bed up in a place in New Brunswick, and the day I'm getting ready to go, um, a lot of backstory there. I was in the hospital and stuff, but when I got out, my wife shows up out of nowhere, and she's helping me call places. She's like, you're going to get somewhere, and I'm going to help you get there. So when I call this place, they tell me they accept me, and they're like, well, by the way, we're a nicotine-free campus. And I said, well, you want me to quit methamphetamine, so I don't know if I can quit smoking cigarettes too. It was just an excuse, a way for me to weasel out of going. And so I called a place called the Owl's Nest in Florence, and they referred me to 143 Ministries. So when I get on the phone, I call, and I'm talking to Adam Sellers here at Game Changers, and he spends about an hour and a half on the phone with me, and um, and he wasn't even supposed to be on rotation that day of answering the phone calls, but he got the call and he answered, and he was at home, bed, sick, and for an hour and a half, I kept him on the phone just asking questions, and I guess I was really asking questions looking for an excuse not to come here, but there was nothing I could find in reasoning to not come. So within that afternoon, I made the second call. I was trying to get back in touch with Adam because I came up with another question. Tanner picks up the phone. That was my second interview, and the next day I was bags packed heading here. So life today, after completing the 3 months at Game Changers and several months in transition program following that, my family and I now relocated here to not here actually in Plum Branch, but right down the road in Augusta. We knew that God had put us in a community that was going to um, help hold me accountable, help my walk in recovery, people that I could lean on and trust, other people that I could give back and help. He really built up a network of friends and leaders around us, both me and my wife, and it's been a blessing. And things have only worked out the way they have is because we've centered our decisions around God and trusting other people. So now I've got a good career here. I'm able to come out to Game Changers on Fridays, teach class with the guys, spend some time with them, fellowship with them, and every time I come here, it's just a reminder of. I remember when I first drove up on this property, seeking the help that they're now seeking. And so there's miracles that happen here. Um, I'm a walking miracle, and it's all glory to God. I mean, I've put in my fair share of work, but it's been through trying to operate in God's will, not that of my own. So one thing people don't understand when it comes to addiction in the recovery community, there are so many families and people that are affected by addiction or alcoholism one way or another, whether it's a family member, a loved one, a friend, an ex, um, several situations that come into play where addiction takes place. And we look at folks that are in addiction or that are alcoholic and we judge them because we don't understand. And and I was that person too. Before I ever had an addiction, I would judge people I saw on the streets, people that were struggling with heroin or meth use, and never understood what is it that makes you want to do that? And what it is that, it's that drugs and alcohol are not the problem, we're the problem. And if we don't deal with us, if we don't get the inside of us cleaned out, if we don't get rid of these resentments, fears, and harms, things that we've built up starting at a young age, and we don't know how to cope with them, well, eventually the ways of the world of coping with things, whether that be pride or anger or judgment, they quit working. So we look for other things such as substances to medicate with. And eventually the substances quit working and you're just using just because you feel like you have to and you can't stop and you won't stop. And that's what takes you down to those. I remember when getting high was fun and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And that's when the misery comes in. That's when your rock bottom hits. And, but just for people to know that there's so many people around that struggle with these things that they need to be open about because recovery is out there. Recovery can happen, recovery is not just for folks that struggle with substance abuse. I mean, anybody can benefit from the 12 steps of recovery and this walk with Jesus. If there's anybody out there that's ashamed of what they're dealing with, and that shame is very heavy when you're in addiction. Like you try to hide it, you don't want people knowing you that you're doing stuff, or you don't want people judging you. And I've been there in those shoes, and it's a heavy burden to walk around is shame. But we have to remember that shame is from the enemy, and that's something that the enemy places upon us to keep us sick. My suggestion is if you want to break free of that, just tell somebody. Tell somebody if you're wanting help and you're truly wanting it, you've got to voice it. And when you do, that's the first step. Really, it's powerlessness. That look, I'm powerless over my drugs or alcohol, and my life is unmanageable in every aspect, and I want to get help. And that's all it takes. And if you can do that, then the rest will follow. God will put the right people in your path to help you become sober, not just clean, but sober and experience true peace and freedom and recovery. So if that is you or maybe somebody you know, please reach out to us here at Game Changers. There's a lot of men here that love and guide other men to a success in recovery. It's completely changed my life, and I have the blessing of seeing it change many other men's lives today, and just praying for the future that we continue to be able to do that. So thank you.